Hi, I want to talk with you about how to set up a rule of life or a rhythm of life that allows you to thrive and flourish as the person that God created you to be. As we seek to deepen our spiritual formation by opening ourselves up to even more of God's grace and love, it's critical to see that it's about setting the right types of intentions. And when I think about a rule of life, I like to root it in the picture of a fruit tree that's truly thriving. I love the first psalm, and in Psalm 1:3 talks about the righteous person as a tree planted by streams of water, whose fruit is always in season, whose leaf never withers. All that that person does essentially prospers. And the key to being that fruitful tree, or if we want to use one of Jesus's parables, we can use the parable of the soils. We want to be healthy, fruitful soil. It's all about what's the nature of our root system. So when we talk about establishing a rule of life for ourselves, all we're really looking at is what are the intentional ways that we allow more of God's grace into our lives. And then we also want to examine what are the negative influences that are deforming us instead of forming us in our relationship with God. And the goal of all this is love. Love for God, love for neighbor, and love for ourselves as we seek to love others as we love ourselves. And so I have a worksheet, and if you're interested in taking a look at the worksheet, I invite you to email me. I'll have my email address at the end of this particular video. It's deepdivespirituality@gmail.com. And I'll send you a worksheet to help you get started. But essentially what you want to look at is right now, what are your soul enhancing practices that you are already doing? And by soul enhancing practices, I break these up into three areas, which I think is important. The first is you want to look at the traditional means of grace. These are the practices that and disciplines, the habits that have helped Christians for millennia. So I'm talking about what are your typical practices with Scripture, prayer, worship, taking the Eucharist or communion, fasting, practicing Sabbath. Again, making a rule of life isn't making a list of all the things you have to do, but it's in what ways are you availing yourself to the classic means of grace. Then also you want to look at your physical health, because we live in bodies. We're embodied souls. And so the way that we treat our body, and like I like to say, our body temple, that's going to affect our spirituality. So also pay attention to how much sleep are you getting? Are you getting enough? Are you rested? What kind of food are you eating? Does your food actually enhance your energy levels? Does it enhance your health? Or is it slowly sort of choking you from literally from the inside out? And what kind of exercise do you do? Again, people in different conditions and stages of life can do different types of exercise, but are you actually doing something, again, to enhance your physical body? Again, as a way of honoring God and allowing yourself to have enough energy to live out that love of God and neighbor. Then the last thing, have you tried contemplative practices? Journaling, centering prayer, the Jesus prayer, certain kinds of breath prayers. There's a lot of different types of contemplative practices you can do. So take a look at what you're doing now, right now, as your spiritual growth plan, and ask yourself, how can I make that a little bit more intentional? Now, also make a list. What are the stress relieving habits and practices that you're doing right now that actually run counter to your growth in love and grace? So what are you using to cover up feelings that you don't like? This is a difficult question, right? I mean, obviously there's certain things that you could cut out, especially if you're consuming too much alcohol, for example, using food to soothe you, or even working too much, right? So make a list of things that are running counter to the kind of stuff that's going to allow you to thrive. Again, this is not to guilt yourself or to feel bad. It's just to note that there's two ways of doing spiritual formation. The rule of life sets up the positive habits that will help us over the long haul, but we have to also remove the negative habits that are pulling against our desire to be the people that God created us to be. And then just take a look at your life and say, what are a couple of shifts that I need to make, whether it's things I need to take out or habits that I need to add. You don't want to make this oppressive. You need to create a rule of life that's completely doable for you in the stage of life that you're in, right? So a person with young children who the kids are going to wake up at random times or be up early, that probably doesn't mean you're going to have your personal time in the morning if the kids are crying, right? So you have to be kind to yourself, and it's better to have a realistic rule of life than to create some ideal one that you never do, or that simply makes you feel guilty and ashamed that you can't practice it. So make some shifts and then lay out, what would your ideal day look like then? For me, I start out with, in the morning, my kids are all grown up, so I usually exercise. I do centering prayer as soon as I wake up. I do some journaling. Then I work with scripture, do some spiritual reading. And then at the end of the day, I also wrap up with a journaling practice. And of course, I have prayer sort of sprinkled in throughout the day. But again, that's just a quick look at how I order my day. But to create a plan that you can be intentional about your growth with God. And you also want to own up, and I think this is another question you can ask yourself, what are your obstacles right now to getting started, right? So as you put your rule of life together, again, if you want some help, you can reach directly out to me, but you want to think about who's a trusted friend that you can share it with. Maybe it's your spouse. Also, you may find it helpful to talk to a spiritual director or a coach, just to give you some third party that knows you really well, that can work with you to help you and encourage you. And also remember, in different seasons of life, you can change it up. So this isn't locking you into something permanently. It's just giving you a tool that you can use to create a series of small habits that over time are going to yield extraordinary results as we open ourselves up more and more to God's grace. Again, I'm super grateful for the opportunity to share this with you. If you have any questions, or if you'd like the worksheet that I use with the folks that I use in my Deep Dive Spirituality coaching program, you can email me at deepdivespirituality@gmail.com. I'd be happy to share this resource with you. Thank you.